All right, hey everyone, welcome to the Konveyor community meeting for May 18th, 2023. My name is Dylan Murray. I'll be hosting today. So we have a few demos on the list today. Before we get started, is anyone new in the group here? Please feel free to introduce yourself. Otherwise, please just add your note or your name to the agenda as an attendee. I'll post that in the chat so we don't lose it. With that said, we'll go ahead and get started because I know there's a lot to cover today. First up, we have Merrick, who's going to be demonstrating the Go-based Hub API tests. Merrick, would you like to share your screen?
Yeah, sure. Can you see my screen or my window?
Yep.
Okay, great. So yeah, I would like to tell something about the hub tests. Actually, it's API part. So the tests are located within the Teckle2 Hub repository. First, talk what makes possible to working with tests, and that's a rich client. It's part of the binding package from the hub. This actually provides methods to interact with the hub API in the way that we have resource like application and methods create, update, get, and the others. So that allows quite easy work with the hub resources. Also, some things related to assertion, some comparison are provided here. As the example, I would like to show quickly identity resource. So we can see that under API directory, there are packages based on the resource type. So first, the package here basically just sets up the rich client and creates a shorthand to working with identity. Then the tests provide some basic sample data. In this case, it's identity with user password, with the certificate, and with the settings Maven file. The test itself, which is this file, then takes samples, loops over them, and using the methods from the rich client, which is like identity create and so on, does the required API actions, checks the result, and that's it. This is similar for other resources from the API, also for application, which contains also some slightly more complex tests. If I return back, I would like to show how this is being executed. Currently, this is this runs on the PRs and also nightly, this API part. It is possible to run it either in disconnected mode, wait for local development, or on working Konveyor instance. Please let me switch to command line and to quickly show how the tests are running. Can you see my console? Assume yes. So I'm going to run locally, hub locally. This doesn't require Minikube or anything. This is just really locally running Go code. And we need to point the tests to look to this locally running hub, which is possible with hub-based URL environment variable. And to run, for example, the identity test is as easy as this. You can see some information about what HTTP calls were done or API calls. For example, for development of the test, it's pretty handy to look directly to the logs from the hub. There could be some errors for debugging, so it should be nice and smooth. Let me give one more example, and that's about running it against Minikube, Konveyor Teckle running in the Minikube, which does pretty much the same. So seems working. And just to have better automation here, or let's say easy covering all tests, we have the make file targets for tests. Currently, there is the API which executes all resources API tests. Takes a few seconds, yeah, and seems to be working well. About ongoing work we are doing, there is the aim to cover all resources of the hub with let's say more complex API requests when necessary. And the other one, bigger one, is about integration tests together with add-ons, and that's to create application analysis, more complex tests that should be helpful with transition from wind-up to LSP. That's it from me. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Mark. That's fantastic. Good to see this finally emerged in. Really appreciate it. Any questions for Mark before we move on? Okay. Up next, we have Ian, who is going to be demonstrating Jira integration from the UI. Ian, do you want to share your screen?
Yes. 1 second.
Awesome.
Hello. Today we are going to see the first implementation of Jira integration and migration waves in Tackle2 UI. So on Tackle side, we have a preset of applications that we're going to use, and we have also a preset number of stakeholders and stakeholder groups we will use in the migration wave. On Jira side, we have a Jira Cloud instance with 3 projects, and we will use the first one, Infra Migration, to interact with. That project has a list of preset types we're going to use as well. And before we can interact with Jira, we have to make sure we have a token defined so we can connect to the API. So I'm going to create a new token here. Copy the token and save it so I can define in the identity of Tackle. So back on Tackle side, we define a new identity here by creating that credential for that token. And the username is Jira email account. Just have to be the right one. So with that credential, we can now define a new instance of Jira in Tackle. We use the URL of the Jira Cloud. That's the Jira Cloud and the identity we just created. We can now actually check on the hub that the connection has already been established between Tackle and that Jira instance. For that user, we can see the 3 projects and the different ticket types that are available. So we're going to use that one. So back here on Tackle, we can now create a new migration wave. And we're going to associate a couple of stakeholders, and I'm not going to define any group. You're going to see why next. So we have our 2 stakeholders defined here, and we have no application assigned to the migration wave yet. So we're going to associate 2 applications here. You can see the respective owners as well are going to be listed in the stakeholders list as well, along with the initial stakeholders associated with the migration wave itself. And then we can see that actually contributor 2 has been associated because it actually belongs to a group that has been associated with the migration wave. So we have no issues there. So we need to export the migration wave to Jira to create the tickets into the Jira instance. So we do that with export form. We select the Jira Cloud, which has only that instance for now. And then we can select the project we want to associate with, along with one of the issue kind. And I'm just going to take tasks here. So we need to wait a little bit for the tickets to get created. And so we have consistent status aggregated value. That should take just a few seconds if I refresh the page on Jira, we already see application 1 ticket has been created. And the second one should be already there. Here we go. So we have the two application entries here. And if you go back in Konveyor here, that's it. It's refreshing. Now the status is in progress because both tickets have been created, and that start day is actually already past time. So that's pretty much what we can do with the migration wave and Jira integration. From here, we can remove an application, and which we can add back from the manage application form. Just need to refresh here for the data to be consistent. Since we remove an application here, one of the owners disappeared, and the status of the tickets has not changed at this stage. If we go back to our Jira instance, we should not be able to delete that instance because it's involved in application of some migration wave. So that is consistent, and that's pretty much all I have to show for today.
All right. Yeah, I think that's it for the Jira integration. Any questions? Cool.
Thank you, Ian. And thank you to Jills. I know he recorded that part of the call, and there's also some work on that issue or that feature done by Sam as well on the team. So thank you everyone for driving that forward. Really cool to see it come together. Okay, moving along. Next up, we have Pranav with general purpose selector for rule labels. Pranav, would you like to share your screen?
Sure. So I had this demo recorded, but for some reason it did not record the highlights. So the part of the cursor where I highlight the screen, so it did not record that part. So I'm just going to run that demo. Right.
No worries.
Right.
Thank you.
Share. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
All right. So today we'll be looking at the label selector. That's one of the options that you can now pass to the analyzer, LSP analyzer CLI. So what it's going to do is it's basically selecting rules based on based on the labels that are present there on the rules. So every rule has labels that identifies it basically gives certain information about the rule. For instance, if this rule applies to a given source technology or a given target technology. So all sorts of information like that can be expressed via labels on rules. And the label selector is basically when you run the analyzer CLI with a set of rules and you pass a label selector to it, it's basically going to select labels, select rules based on the expression that you pass in the label selector as an argument. So label selector will support some basic operations like ORs and not. So you can say, by using not operation, for instance, you can, instead of filtering in a rule, you can filter it out. You can use multiple labels and use and operations to do some complex querying. So I'm just going to share one example of using the label selector. So I have a set of rules created here for this demo. I have 3 rules. Each of them have some labels set on them. So as you can see, labels are a list of strings, with each string being a certain key and a value pair, key and a value pair. So I have 3 rules here. The first rule has 2 labels. Can everyone see my screen, or am I sharing the wrong screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, awesome. So the second rule has 1 label, which says the target technology is Java. And the third rule has 2 labels, which has both the source and the target label set. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this rules example just to make sure. And I'm not going to set a label selector now, just to make sure we get all the violations. Okay, so I'm going to go and look at the output file. And in the output file, I see a set of violations. I have a violation for the third rule. If you go down, you'll find violation for another rule, which has these 2 labels. Scroll down. Oh, there are too many. Okay, so I think we lost that rule somewhere. Okay, but we're getting violations for all of them. So I'm going to run the same command again. And this time, I'm going to add a label selector. And let's just say conveyor.io. Let's say target is go. And yeah, so we have a set of violations. And as we can see in the output here, we have a violation for a rule that has this label set, which we specified in the label selector. And if you go all the way down, you should also see that the rest of the 2 rules were skipped. This is in the same output as the violations. Now, so we just did a label selector on 1 label. So I'm just going to add another label to it and say that match on all rules that have both of these labels set. So we have target go. I'm going to change it to Kubernetes. And we have source set to Java. This is the third. This is going to match on the third rule over here. So the rule ID was langref 001. Let's take a look at the output. And we see a violation for that rule. If you scroll down, you should see the rest of the 2 rules skipped. So yeah, so you can do basic Boolean operations. And you can also do an exclude query by basically running a not operation. So this will basically exclude all the rules that has this label set. And I have to change this to single quotes because Bash doesn't like the. All right, so as we can see, I did a not operation by basically it will filter out that rule. So it filtered out the langref 001. You can see that in the skipped part here. Yeah, that's about it. And I would. Oh, okay. So I can't change this window, I guess. So I just wanted to share the doc on labels. I'll paste that in the chat and stop sharing. Any questions?
I do have one. So will the rules author be able to label rules in any way they see fit? I'm guessing these Konveyor IO slash are the special ones.
Yes. Hang on. Let me share my screen just to share the doc and just give you an idea of how these labels look like. For some reason, I can't share my entire screen. Sorry. Okay. There you go. Can you see the doc?
Yep.
Yeah. So labels are just key value pairs. And as you can see, they can be just a key without a value. They can be just value. It's basically a string. But some labels are reserved, and those are these two, basically to identify the source and target technology. But the rest of the labels can just be strings.
And one question regarding sources and targets. You know that in windup there was a preset set of sources and targets. But I'm guessing with the new syntax, with the new analyzer, we won't have anything like that. It will be determined by the labels that are applied to the different rules, right?
So what we are doing is we are basically looking at all of the source technology and the target technology field in the windup rules and converting them into the LSP format labels, basically. So we already have that code there.
But the CLI won't be constrained by some prefixed values as the windup CLI is right now, right?
I'm not following. Sorry.
So right now, when you analyze with the windup CLI, you can only use a series of prefixed sources and prefixed targets, because those are the ones that come out of the box. Then if you specify a custom rule and that rule happens to have a custom target, then you can use that. But I'm guessing those prefix values won't be part of the CLI itself anymore.
Oh, yeah. Right. For the analyzer CLI, the users will just use the label selector whatever the way they want. In Konveyor, add-on is basically or the UI is basically sending those labels as is. So we are basically saying when the user selects certain target on in the UI, it's basically going to get converted into this something like konveyor.io/target, and that will be passed to the analyzer CLI as a label.
And one question, since source and target are special labels,
right?
The way to tell the tool, to express that you want to use a certain source and target, will it require to use label selector as a parameter, or will we have dedicated parameters for source and target, so the user doesn't have to, be that verbose? Yeah.
Right.
So
we could different. Yeah. Good.
So at least where we're at right now is that the hub is going to seed all the existing built-in targets with labels, right? And so what the UI is going to do is the UI is going to parse those labels and basically synthesize sources and targets and present them to the user exactly the way they do today. So when they select a target, the UI just knows to convert it to a label when it creates the task and runs the add-on.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is more related to the user experience for the CLI. So it feels like a very verbose to have to say, if you want to say migrate to a given target, for example, Java, you have to say label selector konveyor.io/Java, whatever. It feels kind of verbose. Given that we already know that source and target are special labels, we could have special parameters for source and target. That's what I'm trying to say.
I think the problem with that is you start picking winners.
Come again?
The problem with that is you start to pick winners.
You start to pick winners. What does that mean?
when you're looking at a community, bringing together lots of different things, if you have special things for special labels or special values, you start to pick winners of things rather than having a generic thing that anybody can use.
But isn't an analysis tool basically something that is used to migrate from a certain source to a given target?
It's not meant to migrate, right? It's meant to modernize. It's a rule engine that runs rules to help people modernize applications. Migration is a subset of modernization, but it is not the primary use case or not the only use case of modernization.
Okay, so semantics away, aren't you transforming source code from a given source to a given target? Aren't these core principles of the migration path itself, the source and the target? Wouldn't those core principles qualify for dedicated parameters? That's what I'm saying.
Not
No.
necessarily. I mean, I think you can find plenty of use cases for the rules engine that don't really have like a source and a target. Like, or I mean, you could maybe try to like force it in there, but it'd be a bit clumsy. Like, for example, if you had a set of rules for identifying issues and accessibility in web pages or in your JavaScript code or something like that, those could be like a totally valid set of rules you might want to run against your applications. But there's not really a source or a target there, right? You're not changing frameworks. You're not changing from one thing to another. You're just identifying issues, whatever issues might be available. And
Makes
I think we
sense.
just kind of want to make sure that at least at the like tool itself, it remains totally open for those kinds of use cases. And then Konveyor, like as a whole, like top to bottom product can obviously have more like strict opinions.
Okay, understood.
I mean, I don't know what you guys think about this, and this is probably not the good call to discuss that, but I could see something like having a different CLI which basically wraps all of these options, but it isn't in the analyzer CLI.
Yeah, I think that would actually be great. We've actually talked about making it so that the analyzer could potentially be. Oh, go ahead.
So I was thinking that would be the main downstream or that CLI would be the main MTA, not MTA, but the conveyor thing. And
I'd like to understand like why. I think
sure.
I think that maintaining an extra CLI, we would have to be really clear on the value proposition.
Yep.
I'm personally not convinced that it would be a huge value proposition, but we can discuss that.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much, Pranav. Any other questions? Okay. Moving on, we've got Jeff, which will be demonstrating running analysis with the new LSP analyzer for a dummy app running from the hub.
All right. Let me share my screen. And since I'm using Whalen, this takes a while. A lot of clicks. It's awesome. Okay. So the first thing I'll show is the new analyzer add-on. And I just wanted to just flash this up here, and I'll put into the chat URL. And then from there, yeah, that's probably good enough for that. And then, so the next place I want to go is, so from the demo standpoint, the first thing we need to do is we need to, so within the repo, I've gone and built an image that I put in my quay for the add-on. And then I'm next thing to do is to define an add-on that is named analyzer. It could be named anything we want to, and then it references my built image. From there, what we want to do is we want to upload a rules file and create a rule set out of it. This is just the way that I chose to demo it. And so if we look at the so I created rule bundle 12, and the rule set has a file that was uploaded, which is the rule example that's from the analyzer LSP. And then what I'll do is I'll just run a task from that. So the next thing to do would be to run the task. And within the task, you'll see that this is going to be number 12. And what we'll do is we'll create a task that is running with the rules defined as rule bundle 12. And so see here, we'll go and we'll create task 5. And then we'll just kind of keep taking a look at 5. And you'll see the first thing we do is it goes and it grabs this file that's associated to the rule set, and it's running the analyzer with the provider settings updated with an output file here. And you'll see here that it's running it with this rules, this rule file from the rule set. Next thing it does is it runs, after this succeeds, it runs the analyzer dep CLI again with the settings file with the different output. And then once that's done, it looks through the tags generated by the analyzer and updates the tags for the analyzer source. And it also updates the facts associated with the application. So now if we look at the analysis, you'll see here now we have you'll see here we have the uploaded analysis, and the analysis is stored in the hub. And this particular demo app, this is the DayTrader 7 app, and it, for whatever reason, I'm not sure, but it didn't pull out any dependencies, although it would have included dependencies had they been resolved. So the last thing I'll show you is in my UI. You'll see that we have our Java tag that got created by running the analysis. And again, the rule set is just the example rule set, so it doesn't have a lot to it. So anyway, any questions about that?
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Cool to see that coming together. Moving on, last but not least, we've got Ian/Mike showing the inventory scope from the UI with filters and pagination.
All right, sure. I'll demo a little bit about the issues screen, and I think Mike wanted to talk a bit about more of the just overall work that he's done with the server-side pagination and everything involved with that. So let me see. Share my screen. Okay. So this is the issues page as viewed from the left nav bar, and this will show you the composite issues that are viewable across all the applications, and this view will hold this composite level issue with an expandable view that will show more about the validation that the composite issue is tied to. And there's a bit of dummy data in here as we're still hashing out what we're going to display for the static description for the validation. And but the important thing here for this demo is you can see in the top URL bar that we are actually using the server-side URL query params for filtering and sorting and pagination, which is all working great. And also there is an additional piece of functionality we've added for this affected applications view. And the affected applications are viewable when you click on that link in the expandable view of the composite issues. So you're taken to this nested view with the breadcrumb that lets you jump back up to the composite issues view. And you can see here we have a list of what appears to be applications, but it's actually a list of issues that that have these applications associated with the issue, the actual incident of the issue. And that's where we'll take this work going forward. We'll have a way to click on each of these items in the table here, and we'll be able to see a list of the incidents that this application has of this specific issue that we're looking at, that you can see in the breadcrumb there. It's the issue validation name. So I'm not sorry, not the issue validation name. Just the actual name of the validation rule. So that is a bit about what just the context of the screen is and this behavior. But this little screenshot or view of the page actually shows that Mike has got the application filter working for the issues composite page, and the actual filter is persisting down into the affected applications view. So if you filter on application name with the number 2 in it, then you'll actually see the associated applications be reflected. So you see the affected applications goes from 2 to 1, and that's filtering on the child applications associated with the validation rule. So you can drill down into the affected applications and see the filter is carried down, and you can clear the filters. And I think that's it. Mike, did you want to jump in and say anything else about this? Or
Sure. I just wanted to kind of speak a little bit more broadly about the work we've done for improving tables going forward and the server side pagination, filtering, sorting stuff. So when we started working with, moving from our standard client side state for tables to being able to integrate with the hub for much larger collections, we needed to handle the pagination, filtering, and sorting all on the server. We wanted to make sure this played nice with all the components we've been working on, all the reusable stuff, so that we don't have to do a bunch of rework in the future. And so we have a new set of table hooks that are reusable and very abstract that make it really easy to hook into either client-side or server-side state for these things in interchangeable and just like drop-in replaceable way. And that you can see that it drives some of the state from the URL bar, which is it's distinct from the URL parameters that the hub receives. And I did that on purpose where, we've got sort column and sort direction as separate parameters here instead of sort being a colon, delimited thing, et cetera. And that's because we didn't want to impose the requirement on ourselves to maintain that the UI code and the hub code interpret the URL parameters the same way, and that like we have a contract there, because that's an anti-goal. Especially with filters, we don't want to have to re-implement the parser that Jeff has implemented in Go in JavaScript and make sure that implementation is consistent all the time. So the UI has its own language for what URL parameters mean, and then it flows those down into these table components, and then it serializes that into what the hub requires and sends that off to the hub, and then that loads the data, re-renders the table. And anytime you interact with the filter controls or the pagination or whatever, it starts that flow from the top, and it's really effective. It also gives us the bonus of, because a lot of this stuff is driven from the URL, all of these views on what particular page, what particular filters you have, et cetera, are all bookmarkable. They're accessible in browser history. If you, set a filter and set a sort and then go to the app inventory page and press your back button in your browser, you'll get back to the exact view that you were in, et cetera. I can even, there's the dependencies page. I'm going to share my screen for just a moment, and then I'll stop rambling about this. But The dependencies table also has a detail drawer that we're still working on here. And the active row being shown in that drawer is part of the URL. So if I choose this row, you can see it's in the URL, and then I go away and I press back, that drawer is still open. So that's, one of the goals here. We're trying to make it possible to drill down and then restore exactly what you were looking at. Trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say on that, but that stuff is really solid. We're moving forward to the usage of it, but anything to do with tables going forward should be pretty trivial with table state. Anything I'm forgetting, Ian?
No, that sounds great, Mike. Awesome.
Hey, Ian, I don't want to put you on the spot, but as I recall, we were working together last night. You seem to have working running the analysis from the UI that basically does just what I showed with the API. And I didn't know if you wanted to take the opportunity to show that progress as well.
Yeah, I can show. I just have a small little demo that I can show. Well, thank you, Mike, for that explanation. It's awesome.
While you do that, well, one of the things that's to kind of highlight here as well is that what we talked about in terms of mapping, basically dealing with labels is also implemented. Again, just to highlight the progress.
Yeah, I just wanted to just show, like Jeff mentioned, now we have access to, or we have the ability to parse these new YAML rules that the analyzer is consuming in the UI with a YAML parser. So in the custom target creation, which is really the rule set creation modal here, we can upload a YAML file like Pranav was showing with the labels and the label format that's accepted by the label selector for the analyzer. And now the UI understands how to parse those labels out. So in the analysis wizard, when you actually select the custom target here, you're actually selecting the hub resource with the rule associated with it, the rule file associated with the labels from the file. And now in the wizard, you can see that when you select that rule file, the targets are actually parsed out and shown in the targets dropdown, and the sources are available to you to select in the sources dropdown as well. And that's kind of the whole demo I had for that. Yep, that's it.
Thank you very much, Ian and Mike. Any questions? All right.
Oh, sorry. One of the other things I wanted to mention, Ian, also not to put you on the spot, but as I recall too, you can basically, if you were to keep pushing the buttons, it would have run the analysis, right?
Yeah, the final button would run the analysis with the
new add-on.
Yeah, with the new add-on, right? I wasn't sure if the demo app that I had was actually something that rule file would be able to run against, so I didn't want to. I didn't really want to demo that if it was just going to be sort of contrived, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I just wanted to, again, I just kind of wanted to take the opportunity to at least talk about it.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other topics on open discussion. Any last notes before we end the call? Just a minute over. Okay, I'll stop the recording. Thank you, everyone.